And we get halfway through the time and I look up and realize the recording is paused. Nobody has said that they weren't going to be able to make it tonight, but we can record these virtual classes, and so it just gives you something to kind of go back and look at. You don't have to try to catch everything first time through. So welcome. Welcome to Introduction to Professional Ethics and Legal Issues. Sounds like a complicated title, and this is one of the most important ones that we delve into. And as you are aware of things that are happening in our country and in our world, you are probably aware that that even more ethical concerns are being raised in terms of what are counselors' responsibilities and duties to report, and keeping confidentiality, and just so many areas right now that we're having to review as a profession, and also personally. So you're going to get the chance to do both of those during this course, to take a look at some of how and why professional standards are created the way they are, and then to look at your own personal values. I want to take like just about the first 15 minutes or so and have you guys quickly introduce yourselves to me. You got my little bio, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. But I've got my timetable tonight is about 10 or 15 minutes to do some introductions. And then I think that the PowerPoint teaching is going to take about 30 minutes. I apologize for that, because you hear my voice for 30 minutes teaching you, but sometimes we just need to do some teaching time. And then we have a case study that I would like, I'm hoping that the last 30 minutes, we can break up into groups, and you can take a look at that case study and kind of get your feet wet with what making ethical decisions looks like. So, whoa, go ahead, Mary. So tell me who you are, tell me where you're from. We won't take a lot more time than that tonight, although I hope I get to know more about you as the 7 weeks progresses. You know, I feel kind of at a loss this time because I didn't get to participate in the kickoff. And that's where I usually meet a lot of people and start to get to know you. So most of you, I haven't seen in class before, and your faces and your names are new to me. So Sheila, could we start with you and tell me where you're from? You guys probably all know each other, but I do not.
Actually, no, there's a lot of people that are new to me, but
Okay,
I am Sheila House, and I live in Greensboro, North Carolina, and I am completing the end of my first year, and I'm in a 2-year program. So I'm starting my practicum in 7 weeks.
Yay! So you have a practicum site?
Yes.
Yay! That's always a relief to get that under all pinned down. So
yes.
Well, congratulations. Starting practicum is so exciting, to actually get out and be in the field and with other professionals. What a great opportunity.
Yes.
Dana, tell me where you're from.
Hi there, from Bend, Oregon. In the end of my 2nd year, start practicum next month, and
Okay.
Also counseling right now for sex addiction and porn addiction in the evenings. My wife and I have been involved in a ministry for years, and it's turned into a counseling practice.
Much needed, much needed. It's so difficult to find resources unless we want to send somebody out to um, uh, see Dan or, there are a number of people who specialize in it, but it's not always possible for people to go for week-long intensives and
Yeah.
so much needed, so much needed. I'd
We have a
like to hear
waiting
more-
list already.
Yeah, I'd like to hear more about that as we go along too.
Okay.
Be totally interested. Okay, and Matt, you're up next.
Hello, I'm calling in from Salt Lake City, Utah. Sandy, I guess, if you're familiar with the area.
Okay,
And, yeah, I started practicing this fall. Pretty sure I have a site, but it was a site I approached, and so the legal wrangling between Concordia and the site has begun. So we'll see if that plays out.
Mhm. Yeah,
Other than that, I came over from Argosy University after they closed in March of 2019.
okay,
And so I don't know. I make a lot of references to stuff I learned in that program, but they don't teach here.
that's
So
okay.
if that's okay, I'd appreciate it because I
Sure.
really like to use Carl Rogers in just about everything I do. So
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything that you guys have to add from your life experiences just enriches everybody. So, so don't be afraid to speak up and tell us about a resource that you know about or an experience that you've had. You're all bringing life experience with you into this. Um, and we're just going to keep learning together. So yes, absolutely. All right, Gina or Jen or Kristen. I'm sorry.
No
My daughter
worries.
borrowed my other glasses and I am trying to read the screen with my reading glasses.
No worries at all. My name is Kristen and I'm in Costa Mesa, California. And I'm also in my second year. I'm at the end of my second year, but I am waiting until January to do practicum.
To do practicum. Okay.
Mhm. Just to
Yeah.
front load some classes and try to make it a little lighter
Mhm.
when I get there. So
Yeah, because practicum is time consuming. So,
definitely.
for sure. Regina. You're mute.
Can you
There you
hear
go.
me?
Now
Can you hear
you're
me?
in. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I'm Regina and I'm in Phoenix, Arizona, and I just completed my first year with Concordia. So practicum either in January or summer. So
Okay.
next year. Yeah.
Next summer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Very
Mhm.
good. Catherine.
I'm Catherine. I'm from Greenville, South Carolina. And I'm like Kristen, I'm going to kind of delay practicum. I'm ending my second year, but I'm kind of almost on the 4-year track, if there is such a thing. So
Hey, yep.
I'm going to wait and do a year of classes and then a year of practicum.
Yeah.
That's kind of my goal because I have 5 kids at home. So it's a little crazy.
Yeah. Pace it. You've got some time.
Yeah.
Pace it. It's nice to get it done in the 2-year time frame or in the 3-year time frame, but this is something that you're wanting to do with the rest of your life. So, and it's stressful enough to get through a program like this. It's a heavy enough responsibility to get through a program like this. So take your time, pace it. It's okay to do that, I think. Peyton.
Hi, I'm
Hi.
Payson, and I live in El Monte, California, if anyone knows where that is. But I am going or ending my second year here, and so I'll be starting practicum also in August.
Okay. So I'm guessing you have your site all lined up and ready to go. And
Yeah, I just need to get the counselor insurance, broke college student forever.
Yeah.
And then I'll be set.
yeah, good, good. And Ashley.
Hi, I'm Ashley. I'm in Reading, Pennsylvania. Also finishing up my second year, starting practicum hopefully in August. A little behind on all of the technicalities, but hopefully I'll be there in time for August.
Hope it moves along for you. Okay. Crystal.
Hi, I'm
Hi.
Crystal, Parker, Colorado. I am supposed to start my practicum in 7 weeks, but I actually started 2 months ago. It's just not associated to the class, just so I could develop trust with my supervisor on site over here.
Okay.
And so I should be taking on clients by myself within the next 7 weeks, maybe
Okay.
sooner. And yeah, it's been in some ways energy draining and in other ways energy giving, but I'm super excited. And I was originally on the 2-year track, and then I moved to the 3-year track.
Mhm.
And so I'm kind of like in the 2.5-year
2.5
track.
year
So
track?
these 7 weeks are going to kick my butt because I'm taking 2 classes so that I can be
Whoa.
prepared for the practicum class. So,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
What's your second class, Crystal?
Groups.
Okay. Well, not.
And I have 3
Yeah.
teenagers at home.
Ah,
It's gonna
enough
kick my
said.
Mm.
But let's don't have classes kicking your butts, okay? Let's keep everybody healthy and connected so that because it'll get rough sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what we're all here for, is to give one another support in those times. Because there are going to be days when you're going to wake up, if you haven't already, and think, what in the world did I get myself into?
For
And
sure.
why did I ever start this? And there are going to be days like that. And that's going to happen throughout your career. Believe me, you're still going to have days when you think, what in the world did I get myself into here? And that's why having support is so important. Having that network of people who are your safe circle, so important.
Yeah.
So let's keep an eye on that for everybody. Jennifer, looks like Jennifer is driving.
Yeah, so I'm currently driving from San Diego back to where I live, Salt Lake City, to pick up my kids to drive back out to San Diego. So
A little road trip there.
yeah, so I am on the 3-year track. I will start practicum in August. I have a site lined up that's settings, so more of the emergency, shorter duration with clients type setting. I will have an opportunity of working with patients on their that are having their like out, patient care and everything like that. So I'll get a good clinical mix of everything, including diagnosing and treatment planning and case management. So I'm excited.
That sounds like a great balance. So you may feel like at times that you're drinking from a fire hose, but you should be used to that from here. All right, and Hunter, let's hear from you.
Hey, Mary, Hunter Richards, Palmer, Alaska.
Alaska.
Yep.
Wow.
Just finishing up my second year, I guess, getting ready to go on the internship, going to be working in a women's residential addiction treatment center. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Is addictions an area that you're really interested in, or is this kind of where an opportunity opened up for?
So I am actually at this point a certified addictions counselor.
Oh,
but I'm
right.
working
Well,
a lot
then,
of outpatient. So this is going to be inpatient.
yeah,
a
right
little
in your
different.
wheelhouse. Yeah.
Yep. So
All
pretty
right.
excited about it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. So thank you guys. We do have a few people missing. 1, 2, 3. Just 3. So we're pretty good. And hopefully I'll hear from them. They'll email or something later tonight. So let's just kind of jump into things here. I sent you all copies of the PowerPoint, and I'll pull it up in a minute. Also copies of the case study that we're going to be using tonight. So you have in your syllabus a sheet, section 5, that outlines for you real like week by week what's due. And I will also try to mention that in my overview to you each week, kind of what's coming up that week, and if there's anything that you need to especially pay attention to for the next week. The assignments are pretty straightforward. If you follow through the assignments, you'll be okay. I do use grading rubrics to grade, and I'm looking for the meat. And looking for you, especially in a class like ethics, looking for you to substantiate what you write. Where do you find validation for this? It might be in the Corey textbook. It might be in a peer-reviewed article that you've read. It might be in another one of your textbooks. But what are you basing your comments on? Where are you pulling those from? APA style. Everything is APA style. If you've been around for 2 years, you should, even a year, you should be pretty accustomed to that right now. And we want to drill that into you now because it does become important later, particularly as you want to write professional papers that you want the counseling community to pay attention to. You do have a final project in this class. It's a little bit different. We give you 3 options for topics, or for 3 umbrella options for topics. And you choose the one that you would like to research, that you'd like to find out about. But we are specifically looking for ethical concerns in these 3 areas. So this week, in week 1, you're going to be choosing your general area and thinking about maybe how you want to write about that. One of the areas is geriatrics and long-term older care. And one of the things that you might research in that area is euthanasia. That's becoming more and more an issue as we have an aging population, and they're looking for options for having dignity, living life with dignity. And so that might be something that you would choose. I think, trying to think the other 2 right offhand. One, I think, is partner violence and abuse. And so in that area, you might want to look into what's required of us and what are we allowed to report? Are we required to report? And for these, you're also going to want to look at your state, specifically what your state says, because all states don't say the same thing. And certainly we know with the overturn of Roe v. Wade and that being rolled back, those decisions being rolled back over to the states, we know that we are going to get a variety. All of the states are not going to be on the same page about the legislation that they write. So you want to be sure that you know what the legislation is looking like in your state. Excuse me, in your state. I think that's all of the like the kind of generalized things. We're going to be using Corey's book. I think anything that the Corey's write, Gerald Corey writes, is solid. I still have Corey books on my shelf from when I was in graduate school 30 years ago. Actually 34 years ago now, but who's counting? And I still go back. And as we've, as we've added and as we've taught out of newer Corey books, I've just added those to my shelf as well. But Corey usually writes with clarity and with a practical eye to what are you going to need to know to work with a client in the field. And I appreciate that. You should already have an APA handbook. You should have gotten that in sometime in the past couple of years. You should have gotten hold of one of those. And then the optional book this time, the one for extra credit, is Vice's book, God at Work. And if you have not read God at Work, I am going to just really encourage you. That book can be a life-changing book in terms of how we look at the concept of vocation and the concept of work. It's mind expanding. And so I really want to encourage you, just, dig into the first chapter and see what you think and then go from there. But I think it's a book that is well worth reading. It answers or it speaks to, I think, a number of concerns that we have as therapists in terms of calling and what does that calling mean, and where are our boundaries with regard to calling and being called to a purpose in the kingdom. So just a good resource. So I would really encourage you to take a look at that, and I'll probably be citing it as we go along. So I'm going to pull up a PowerPoint. I'm hoping I'm still on. Yeah, I'm doing pretty well on time. Y'all have to watch me because I can get rambling and okay. We gotta go back and share my screen. There we go. Lord, that's better. That. All right. Start here at the beginning. Good place to start. If anybody has questions, just jump in. We kind of did that. The reason that we have a code of ethics is because it gives us protection. It gives us boundaries. It creates a standard of practice among all counselors that we know this is what is expected of us. This is what our clients can expect of us. It clarifies our ethical responsibilities, and identifies what we share in common as ethical responsibilities. And you're going to hear me say over and over again that we're looking at both our professional ethics and our personal ethics. And there can be times when those come into conflict with each other. So we have to have a way to reason through those. And then the code of ethics protects our clients. It gives us a standard of behavior so that they are able to have some reasonable expectations of us as professionals. Whether you're looking at the ACA code of ethics or whether you're looking at the AACC code of ethics, the reasons are protect us, give us boundaries, clarify our responsibilities to the client and to ourselves, to the profession, and also it protects, they protect our clients. One of the things that we look at is what are some of the ethical violations that we encounter most, or that are most likely to trip up counselors. And so there have been a number of studies done of disciplinary action against counselors to see kind of what was primary in those. Looking at the licensing bureau, the kinds of violations, what sanctions were imposed. And so, these studies identified 221 variations of violation. But they grouped them into 14 categories. And I think that probably they'll make sense to you as you see them. One is counselors with substance use. And I would say also that translates to our clients. We cannot counsel with a client who comes in under the influence of substances, because you're trying to counsel the substance, not the client. And so there have to be some boundaries there. I keep slipping there. Client boundary violations, where clients want to give you gifts, they want to invite you places. And sometimes a counselor with not really good ethical grounding will give in to the client. They think, what's wrong with doing this? And what that does is, in counseling, there's always going to be an inequitable relationship. And you as the counselor are going to hold the power in that relationship. And so when you cross over those personal boundaries, it sends a message to the client that creates, that interferes with the client's safety. And we'll talk more about these as we go along. Falsifying your professional identity or going beyond the scope of practice issues. And probably going beyond the scope of practice issues comes up more often than falsifying a professional identity. Now we, all states now have licensing, and there are some checks and balances in place. But a lot of times there's not a whole lot of checks and balances in place with regard to scope of practice. And that doesn't mean that you never see anybody outside of your area of expertise. But it does mean that if you are presented with some clients, one that always comes to mind for me is eating disordered clients. Unless you have had really good training in working with eating disordered clients. You should not be counseling eating disordered clients. You will almost always wind up harming rather than helping. For most people, their first thought with an eating disordered client is, we've got to get a meal plan. We've got to get a food plan. And that is absolutely the worst thing that you can do. And so there are areas where specialized training is really important. Abuse recovery. Trauma therapy, areas where you really need to have training before you do it. And sometimes even with training, there's a need to have some practice before you start working with clients. I've been training for the last couple of years to do EMDR, but I am not at a place where I feel like I have practiced enough in our practice settings that I feel comfortable working with my clients and doing EMDR with my clients yet. That day's going to come, and probably not, hopefully not very long from now. But for right now, even though I know the techniques, there are still so many nuances that I am not aware of, that I need to see people using these techniques, and then practice them, and that hopefully then will prepare me to do a better job. Failure to obtain continuing education. Every single state requires that you have a certain amount of CEUs per year. In Indiana, it's 20, and 3 of those have to be in ethics. You'd be surprised how many people just kind of skip over those and think, oh, well, I don't need to do that. They're not going to audit me. And then they get audited. And then fines happen and just all kinds. So you want to keep up with continuing ed. My problem is not taking continuing ed. There's always so many things that I want to learn that there's way more of them. Failure to report criminal behavior, and this is going to become this one can become dicey, and given some of the things that are happening culturally for us right now in our world, this one is going to become, that's going to be one that's going to be more predominant. For instance, if your state passes a gun law that a person has to have a permit to carry concealed, and your client comes in and tells you that they've got a gun out in their car and they keep it there all the time, or they keep it for their protection all the time. So question becomes, are you now, as a mandated reporter, required to report that your client has this weapon in their possession, this unlicensed weapon in their possession? So there are a number of things. False billing. You always want to bill accurately to insurance companies. Don't try to cheat on billing on the insurance company, because it'll come back to haunt you. Improper documentation, and this is really failure to keep our client files. We don't have to keep detailed files, but we do have to keep some minimal things on record about a client. And a lot of people skip over that. They think, well, I'll catch up with it next week, and next week doesn't come. So Supervision related issues in while you are acquiring your license, especially, there's usually a requirement that you have that you are supervised by someone who is licensed. And where we see the most problem here is that maybe somebody is maybe somebody's working in a crisis center, and they're saying that their supervisor is the head of the crisis center is their supervisor. But the supervisor is not meeting with them on any regular kind of basis. The supervisor is not sitting in and observing them. And so these are the kinds of things that that can become problems. Criminal behavior, we don't want to be engaged in criminal behavior, and we need to know what our state says about if a client discloses to us that they are engaged in criminal behavior. Going on down, payment issues, trying to collect past bills, that's usually easily covered in your consent to treat that you give to your client right up front. And so they know what will happen if they're unable to meet their fee obligations. Duty to report issues. In week 2, you're going to be taking the California mandated reporting training. So you'll get a certificate at the end of that. And that will give you a lot of information about duty to report. And providing treatment without consent. Younger therapists are not as bad about this, I don't think, as older ones are, but we are required to give our clients an informed consent, a packet of informed consent information that tells them what they can expect from therapy, what is expected from them, talks about payment plans or how payment is made. All of those details are spelled out in that consent to treat form. And then the client signs it and it becomes a contract between the two of us. So it's really important to provide that for your client up front. Failure to perform or to conform to professional standards. The people who get in real trouble with professional ethics and professional conducts are the people who really have a lone wolf attitude. I'm going to do things my way. Nobody's going to tell me what to do. No, I'm smarter than everybody else. And my way is better than everybody else's. You know, and there are strong, valid reasons for why these professional standards are in place. Are there other ways to do them? Yes, there absolutely are. But in order to provide the best protection for you as a therapist, for your client, for your organization, then having these standards just gives us a foundation to work from. This little, again, a little bit more statistics. The 3 that ranked highest among independently licensed therapists were client boundaries, falsifying professional identity, and going beyond the scope of their practice and documentation. For people who were non-independent licensed therapists, they were working under somebody else's umbrella, falsifying professional identity, substance abuse or dependence, and false billing or theft. Um, so that just gives you kind of an idea. When we look at ethics, we have to use our critical thinking skills. That's just absolutely imperative. And so what happens as we do this more often is that we do strengthen our own judgment and decision-making process. And what that means is I'm challenging all the time. Okay, in this particular situation, does what I believe to be a professional boundary, does it hold true? And certainly one of our responsibilities is to advocate for social justice issues. And by advocate, what I always, some people don't like me on Facebook because I don't listen to inflammatory stuff on Facebook. Many years ago, I had a mentor who said, if you're going to present a problem, always present some kind of solution. And so that's what I look for in today's climate. Are we entitled to be upset about things? We absolutely are. But before I vomit out my opinion, then I want to have spent some time using my critical thinking skills and coming up with, okay, so what are some alternatives here? What would make this better? And how can I engage in helping to make this better? So absolutely, we serve as advocates for social justice issues. And also challenging, counseling has, for the most part, counseling has been white, I would say upper middle class. Some people say middle class, but I would say white, upper middle class function. We haven't done a good job of understanding why people come for counseling under other cultural circumstances. We've not done a good job of providing cultural safety for clients. And so we have so much room to grow in that. And in that, we are constantly learning and assessing the behavior of the profession, also assessing our own behavior. This is a big one, and you're going to hear me say it over and over again. Some things you'll hear me say until you're sick of hearing them. But ethical codes are not black and white. There is not a black and white answer to every question. Most of them are gray, have a gray area. And so that's why it's important for us to have a process so that we can analyze ethical situations and come up with solutions that benefit our client, that benefit society. So when you're thinking about ethics, I want you to learn to think not necessarily either or, but and also. Because you can create a black and white. And certainly there will be some times when there just is a standard that it's absolute and it needs to be absolute. But so much of the time, things are issues and circumstances are going to be personalized to the individual that you're working with. And so you need to be able to think about what's going on with that person and what is good for them. The codes a lot of times don't hit the gray issues. They hit the black and white, and that's okay. That's what they're there for, to give us that starting point. But that doesn't mean that we can't pursue the gray issues, and that actually it should be a part of our responsibility to pursue the gray issues. Also, memorizing the ACA Code of Ethics of ACC Code of Ethics, not gonna make for necessarily for good ethical practice. You need to know those, but that's one resource in your toolbox, and you're gonna have a number of other resources to look to in that toolbox in addition to. So again, it's not an either or, it's an and also. We can have ethical dilemmas when we have two competing ethical values. This may come up as you have clients who come in who believe very strongly differently in some areas than you do, and you're going to have to decide, you know, can I work with this client? Am I able to step out of my worldview and enter into theirs? Those are going to be things that you're going to have to wrestle with. Your own personal values may compete with some of the ethical and the ethical standards, the professional standards and ethical standards. Are there ever times when when our personal values override professional ethics? I think yes. But I think you need to have a very valid reason for stepping outside the ethical boundaries that are provided for us. You need to have a strong reason why you're doing that. And it needs to be a decision that you make not just on your own, but that you consult with others before making that decision. Sometimes the codes may conflict with institutional policies and practices. I hope this doesn't happen to you very often, but it can happen. You know, sometimes an organization will say, you know, this is what we're going to do, and whether or not it lines up with professional practices may be sometimes questionable. And always, we are becoming more and more aware of multicultural situations, and that ethics in one situation might not transfer to another culture. We'll talk about those as we go, some of those as we go along. Watch my time here. Need to talk faster. These are in your book, so I'm going to encourage you to go back and look at them. But typically we have 6 moral principles that guide our decision-making process. That's autonomy. That is self-determination. Clients being able to choose their own direction, not directed or driven by us. Non-malfeasance, this is do no harm. And so that means that I pull back from doing anything that might take the risk of hurting my client. Beneficence is advocating for the good of other people. Whatever options I'm identifying, I want them to offer options of well-being for my client. And justice. A lot of times we get people who feel that life has really been unjust, and you know, you will get into some good discussions with people about what that means. Is it providing equitable opportunity? Or is it making sure that that everything is divided equally to everyone else? So, so that sometimes becomes an issue. Fidelity. This speaks directly to our integrity. That when I tell my clients something, they can count on it. And it doesn't matter how many times they ask me about it, they'll get the same answer from me. And it will be consistent. If I make a promise to them, if I say that I will do something, I do it and follow through on it. If I'm not able to follow through on it, then I come back to them and I explain to them, you know, I wasn't able to find that particular resource this week. I'll keep looking and get it to you as soon as I can. But this right here, this is what cements trust in our relationships. And truthfulness. Our clients want us to be honest and they want us to be truthful. A client knows when you are bullshitting them. I'm sorry. When you are being false, they know it. And they may not call you on it, but they know it. So it's important here for us to be open and genuine. If I don't know something, it's okay to say, I don't know it. You know, even sitting with a client on Monday, we got into some stuff and I said, you know what? I have no idea where to go with this right now. You know, and my client, of course, we've been working together for a while, but my client was okay with that. So we sat and we talked together and we ballparked some ideas and couldas and maybe it's this or you know, it might be this. And so we got some options out on the table. But I really, from what we had been talking about, I didn't have a clue as to what was most important for us to pursue with her. So it was important for me to tell her that rather than try to guide her down a rabbit trail that maybe would have meant nothing to her. So be truthful. This model is in your book. It's probably a good idea to make a copy of it someplace and just have it on a sheet. But when we are looking to make ethical decisions, we want to identify the problem that we're faced with. We want to identify any potential issues that might be involved. And that's you know, who else might be involved in this, who might need to have input into this. Then we want to take a look at the codes, at the relevant codes, and see if there are any conflicts. We want to know the applicable laws and regulations in our state. Sometimes laws override professional codes. And so we need to be aware of that. Always, 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 we want to obtain consultation and supervision. I've been doing this for over 30 years, and I still do not make these kinds of ethical decisions or work through these ethical processes without going to my team, to the people that I consult with and that supervise me. And then look at, okay, so what could be the possible outcomes here? What could be the consequences? And then what seems to be the best course of action? When I get down to here, the client is going to have the majority of the input into that. You know, up here, we've identified different options, possible options, and we've talked through those. When we get down here, then the client hopefully is going to make that decision based on potential outcome, who it impacts, who the decision impacts, how the decision impacts them. And so as we're kind of moving through this, we're keeping the client involved throughout the decision-making process. But we're also putting some professional teeth into the exploring that we're doing. So that means that we have to be self-aware. And we have to know when something pulls our yanks our chain. We have to know our own personality, because like I said before, in that counseling room, you are the powerful person in there, and you can influence your client with just with not saying anything, with just a look, with your body language. And so you want to be aware of all of these things and the impact that they might have on your client. Your client's goals, and your goals as a counselor. What are you wanting for this client? Because we all wind up wanting something for our clients. And sometimes it fits with what's best for them, and sometimes it doesn't. Our own personal needs, saying that our relational needs are met outside of our counseling profession. And then transference and countertransference. You by now have heard this over and over and over again. There are two key things that we always need to be aware of. Our own personal dynamics, how much job stress we're under at any given time, what additional life roles we're trying to balance, and how we are doing with our self-care. So we bring all of that into ethical decision-making processes, and all of those things impact, they weigh in. Always, we are looking to tie into if I'm struggling with ethics in some area, does it have to do with attachment? Does it have to do with separation? Does it have to do with integration? Is this an adulthood issue? And so by going back and looking at those character issues, it can, just like it does with our clients, it can give us great information about what's going on with us in engaging with a particular situation. All right. If you're not tired of hearing me talk, I'm tired of hearing myself talk. So, but that's the basics, the gist of things. Questions before we go into the case study of Judy. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
I have a question.
All right. Now
I was
can see
wondering
it.
if those 14 categories, if they were in order, like nationally.
If they're in order.
Yeah, like order of the violation, the frequency of the violation.
Yes.
As like the United States.
As they
I
were,
imagine.
yeah, as they were reported in, as they were studied in that report. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? It was a lot but a lot of it too, as you read the book, will be reinforced by what you're going to be reading in the book. So
I think it goes a long way to highlight why it's important for us to research the different professional organizations that we are in, to find those that align with not only our value systems, but also the particular clientele we want to work with.
yes, yeah, great point, Jennifer. And exploring ethically, if you are engaged in a job interview somewhere and it's not feeling right to you, or they're saying something that you know you would have a problem with, don't sign on for something like that because you're going to be miserable. They're not going to change their standards. They're not going to change their protocols. They're going to expect you to adapt to their protocols. So watch for things like that when you are interviewing. And it is important to find someplace that pretty much aligns with your values. And the standards that you ethically believe are important to follow. Okay. Other questions, thoughts? Okay, yeah.
I
Yeah,
actually,
go ahead, Kristen.
I had a question. I had an acquaintance recently tell me that her therapist, she's now friends with, and like stayed the night at her house, and they're just like buds now. And I was shocked, like floored. But I'm curious, like, what would happen to that therapist? Like, there's no
If
like
something
state where
happens
that's
to the
okay, right?
client, or if they have a major disagreement of some kind, then that client could be brought up before the state licensing, or that counselor could be brought up before the state licensing board. You know, chances are at this point, nobody is going to report it. And hopefully it would be nice if that counselor had support who was cautioning her against the wisdom of that. You're all going to run into clients that you think, oh, I would really like to be friends with this person. And there's nothing wrong with the feeling of, you know, this is a person that I could be friends with. But professionally, in order to protect the client and to protect yourself, that's a boundary that you don't want to cross. You know, now you're going to read this week in the ethics um, guidelines that you know, it's okay for a counselor to have a sexual relationship with a client if they've not been in counseling for 2 years, if there's been a 2-year separation. You know, and that's the guideline, and people do it. But think about the implications of that. What if that goes south? Which a lot of times it does, because of the client's dependency on the counselor. Just think about, you know, one of the steps is think about the potential outcome. You know, think about the potential outcome of that.
Not to be nitty gritty, but I believe that the ACA Code of Ethics has it at 5 years and the AACC has it at 3 years.
Yeah. Okay. I think AACC used to be 2, and ACA has always been 5. ACA has always been stricter on that than AACC, and I'm not sure why. That's a good discussion question to have with AACC. So, but yeah, Kristen, I'd be concerned about your friend, and I'd be concerned about the therapist. It's just not a good situation for either of them. And your heart does go out to clients, and you want to help them the best way that you can, and particularly clients who have strong attachment breaks. But there are other ways to repair attachment, rather than, you know, getting our clients dependent on us. We want, a part of what we want to do is help them build a social network separate from us, and from what we do in session. So That's sad. I'm sorry to hear that.
Thanks. I felt that way too.
Other thoughts, questions? Okay. Well, let's take a look at the case of Judy. And can you all pick up your copies in the group room? Because I don't know if it will let me share it to all of the group rooms or not. Here, we'll take a look at it real quick. More quickly than I really had planned on, but. Okay. The case of Judy says that you are a first-year provisionally licensed counselor. You don't have full clinical licensure yet, but you are approved under a supervisor. You're working for a private agency, and the agency services adult populations. You've been there for 3 months. You're still under a 6-month standard probationary period. That is pretty standard. You're meeting with a 36-year-old African-American female, Judy, for the first time. She was referred to you for counseling from her employer, as your agency serves as recommended clinicians with her company's health insurance. Her direct supervisor requests a report from you regarding your client's treatment, and Judy has signed a release. Her company is a large manufacturing company in the city and has hundreds of employees. The contract with your mental health agency has been relatively new and is proving to be lucrative for your office. Your supervisor made the statement in staff meeting last week, it's like a guaranteed paycheck. Nobody screw this up. Judy enters your office. She's visibly shaking and verbalizes how nervous she is to be there. As you begin your assessment, she states, I'm not trying to be mean towards you, but I really don't want to be here. I only came because they said I'd lose my job if I didn't. She's very resistant. She continues to say things like, I know you'll tell them everything I say, so I don't know what to tell you. And after much probing, you start to hear about extremely harsh working conditions at her place of employment. In fact, it becomes quite clear that Judy is describing a hostile work environment, to include multiple incidences of sexual harassment and one altercation that you view as sexual assault. Judy stated that her direct supervisor, the one who also referred her to treatment, found her alone in the break room a few weeks ago, cornered her, and groped her. When she told him to stop, he laughed and said it was the fringe benefits of working there. Judy told him she would report him, to which he said, go ahead, it's my word against yours, and I've worked here 30 years. He's a 50-year-old white male. Plus, I think you've been under significant stress lately. I'm not sure you are remembering things correctly. 2 days later, she had a mandatory referral for counseling due to undue stress reactions. Judy feels very much like she will lose her job if she doesn't comply with being silent and allow any future sexual advances, and believes the referral for counseling was just so her supervisor could make a case that she's crazy. Finally, she's terrified that you will put any of this in your report back to the HR officer at her work. You have 6 guaranteed sessions with Judy under the contract and can request more as needed. So what I want you guys to take just a little bit, we won't have a long time, about 10 minutes or so, to talk about is, what's your first response to this case? What would be some of your first steps as a counselor? And then what are the ethical issues that are presented here? Are there advocacy issues? And if so, what are those? How about multicultural issues? And your big concerns, including any of your own personal concerns, and what might be an initial action plan that you would take. So I'm gonna put you all into group rooms. And I'm not expecting that you will work this totally out in 10 minutes. I just want you to jump in and get a feel for what an ethical issue can look like and the kinds of questions that it might raise for you, what you might want to be thinking about in terms of your responsibility. So I'm going to stop screen sharing. I'm going to I'm going to put you in groups, 2 groups of 4 and 1 group of 3. And I'll give you a warning about 2 minutes before time is up. And we'll come back and just do a little bit. We won't do a lot of debrief tonight, but we'll just do some and just hopefully get your curiosity piqued a little bit. All right, here you go.
I'd also probably, oh, guess so we're doing that. And then
Hi guys,
I'd
I
be
popped
like,
in.
oh, that's fine. So yeah, first I'd be like, that's a lot that you're going through and everything like that. Let me take this opportunity to talk to you about confidentiality and what I owe you as my client versus what I owe contractually to your company. Secondly, I would then, after reiterating what my responsibility is there and allowing her to process that and we communicate and discuss, I would also probably not mind mentioning the simple little fact that whatever doesn't make it in the notes may or may not have actually happened. I know it's an ethical gray area, but if it's not in the notes, did it really happen? And, but I would definitely want to work with her if she was wanting to work with her through whatever the process looks like and really, you know, be on her side and be a support to her with everything that she is going through and be a person who hears her, validates her, and believes her, because that is something she is obviously lacking in her life.
Good start, sounds like.
Bringing in the supervisor, is that something? I mean, I can't tell from the writing, they were concerned about money, you know, but if it, hopefully if this is a trusted supervisor in some other respect, that it feels like it would be a little over my head and I would want to bring someone in and kind of get their opinion on that and also make her feel safe with me.